Hello guys and welcome to the last chapter of this course. So in this course we're gonna examine the two moves, dxc4 and f5. So f5, I was really surprised to see that a few strong GMs play this move, black is aiming for stone wall structure, but in version which is much more favorable for us. So why is favorable for us? I'm gonna immediately example here. So the thing is, we don't need to play b3, bishop b2, queen c1, bishop a3, which is typical idea, in stone wall structures. So here we don't have e3. So instead of this long-term plan, we can immediately play bishop f4. We don't have the pawn on e3, so we can play immediately, and trading dark square bishop will be definitely good for us, And I'm not afraid of any attacking plans by black g5, h5. For me, it's important to control e5 square, And in following wise, I'm gonna show you how it's easy to handle such a position. Knight f6. Okay, it's also possible to take on c4, but you don't want to separate structure, in stone wall like this. You want to keep the pawn, but after g4, we simply destroy completely the structure from black. Okay, just example how not to play. So knight f6, e3, following line is very logical, and knight e4. So in this moment, g5 is definitely threat and logical idea from black. We play here h3, so we can have the safe square for the bishop. Knight d7 and rook c1. I like this move, simply to secure if some moment if he take on c3, so we can maybe take with the rook. Okay, so g5 I think is here most logical move. Also, it's possible to play king h8 to prepare g5, but I don't see why he should prepare g5 when he can play immediately. Knight e2, very important move, so we are ready to play knight e5. Knight e5 and f3, so he can't exchange the knights. a5, queen c2, g5, finally here it's time. And according to engine, like the best move is bishop d6, but I think it doesn't matter what he played. h5, g4, any other move, knight e5 and f3 is coming here. We're gonna kick out this knight from e4 and we're gonna obtain the control over e5 square. Okay, so bishop d6, and of course we can trade dark square bishops, which is our, but here we have even better move, knight e5. So f3 or f4 is coming, depends on how he's gonna react. So for example, if you play queen f6, bringing the queen into the attack, f3, and the knight is trapped. If we play bishop b8, leaving some square for the knight, we can play immediately here f4 and takes with f pawn. g4 is coming and we have dominant position. Okay, so if he takes with knight here, we take with the bishop, and knight f6 is probably the most logical move, since bishop e5 would be a big strategical error, because after d takes, at the end we're gonna stay with knight versus bishop. It's close position, pass pawn on e5, knight will dominate over the bishop easily. So after knight f6, I would suggest here c takes d5. This is the move we usually don't do in such a structures, in Queen's Gambit, Slav defense, stone wall, because after e takes d5, he has good position, knight e4 usually comes, but the problem here, he's pinned that after f4, f5 is becoming the target and we have winning position. So unfortunately for black, he must take here bishop e5, and after d takes knight e5, I would suggest bishop c4 here move. So it depends how he's gonna play, but f4 and d4 is coming. And after I play e4, f takes, maybe queen takes, e6 is weak, g5 is weak, king is open, and bishop on d7, or like square bishop from black is still bad. Okay. So instead of king h8, maybe immediately g5 is better move. Bishop queen e8. So normal move in stone wall structure. Queen wants to come to help the attack, but the point is we simply continue with our plan. Knight e2, removing the knight so he can trade, knight e5 and f3. So it doesn't matter what happens, we just follow the same plan. f3 is coming, we're gonna kick out this knight and gradually, improve our pieces. While there's no attack from black, bishop on c8 still stuck, he don't have time to transfer bishop to g6, so I must say the position looks completely lost, and the computer agrees there. So that's very simple lines from here. Knight f6 is also possible, but in this move order, yeah, I mean, of course, we can play again bishop f4, but I think we can play immediate with bishop g5. The point is we go for the same setup, but in one moment he must simply to jump to e4. I mean, anything else doesn't make sense. Of course, he can play h6 and everything there, but we simply stick to our previous plan. So if we continue with knight e4, which I think it must happen in some moment, we're gonna trade our square bishops, which is very important for us, and fight for e5 square. So after takes rook c1, we saw already this move before, knight e2, and now we are ready to fight for e5 square, followed by f3, a5, h3. I mean, we have a lot of space for moves like this, you know, simply prophylactic, waiting to see what's gonna black do against our plan. So the problem for black is definitely this bishop on c8. Yes, knight on d7 is covering e5, but he can't do that forever. So that's why after knight d6 and queen c2, you know, we are ready to jump knight e5, and it doesn't matter what's gonna happen, black can't prevent that. At least not without white square bishops. So computer suggests here knight f6, and it's logical because this is games between two computers and between two engines, since it's logical that this is the best moves. But as I said, knight covers e5 square, which is very important for black, but this bishop is even more important. So if you don't move this knight, bishop will not have the space. I mean, b6 and that kind of options is not good. Not after knight e5, c6 will be weak. There's always c takes d5, queen c6, maybe some c5 ideas in the future. So b6 will be even worse. So after knight e6, of course, we follow knight e5, and here we close the center, c5 and f3. So this is the result of our strategy. We control e5 square, and after f3, we control also e4 square. We will gradually build up here our position, you know, and it's also important to note that after knight e5, this would be very, very bad move, you know. Bishop will stay closed, you know, as in prison of his pawns, and d4 will be very, very nice outpost for us. Okay, so that's it with this line. Also, I choose this line because it for me it seems most logical move, you know. Bishop f4, develop bishop d3, castle jump, knight e5 followed by f3. But I also want to mention here that knight h3 is also an interesting setup. I mean, normal famous plan in stone wall positions, you know. And if you feel more comfortable in positions like this is also possible to play. But my proposition is to play knight f3 followed by bishop f4 or bishop g5, depends how black plays. Okay, that was the f5. So let's jump to d takes c4. I must definitely say that d takes c4 definitely have the vibes of the accepted queen's gambit, and here I suggest e4, kind of the most logical. We want to take the center, you know, take the pawn. So e3, in my opinion, would be very passive, and we would definitely also transfer to some lines of queens, except the gambit where we have the isolated pawn. So I don't want to play that position, so my suggestion is to play e4. Here again we have two possible moves from black, c5 and knight f6. Let's start with knight f6, which I think it's not the best possible move. And after bishop c4 and c5, my suggestion is here to play knight f3. d5 is also a good alternative for us. There's nothing wrong with this move, you know. We are in accepted queen's gambit. We have strong passed pawn, but black idea is to play around this pawn over the dark squares. Immediately we want to here to mention that bishop d6 is mistake, and we don't play bishop d6 before we secure the b5. So a6 is important here to secure b5. Why is that? Because after check, there is no typical queen e7 because of knight b5. And now we see the problem. From black, why it's important to control b5. And here we have winning position. So instead of that, a6 is important here to control this. I'm not sure, but I think most of here players immediately would play a4, but we play knight f3. And after queen e2 check, I think here's interesting improvement is castle. So if black play castle here, we can take on e7, play bishop f4, take the control over this important diagonal. d6 is always here problem for black, so I think he needs to take here on e. And the knight d2 is the idea. So one international master played here bishop g4. And I think the best move for us immediately to play h3. I know usually I always advise to my students don't play such a move like this because he already came there to take, but I think he would not rush with this. Knight b7, b5, so many possible threats from black that I want to immediately to see what he wants. So if he wants to take, I want to immediately close this counterplay on queen side with a4, a5. I have bishop pair, I have pass pawn on d5, and according to computer we have slightly better position, and it definitely seems like that. So if you play here castle, knight d2, it looks like it has some vibes of Benoni, and I think it looks like good Benoni for us. There is no queens on the board. There is no attack from black. We have bishop here. We have pass pawn, deep pass pawn, and I think that's enough to secure a slightly better position for us. So that's with d5. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that move. But in my opinion, a better move for us here is knight f3. This line is forced, and you know, I always like this structure and accept the queen's gambit. Usually arise after d5, d4, d5, c4, d takes e4, e5. Usually arise from that kind of structure, but there we have 4 versus 3, here is 4 versus 4, but still I like these structures, you know, it's not easy for black to develop, as we're gonna see in few following lines. So here knight c6 is definitely not good move, and I can't remember what Grandmaster Horvath played here, but knight c6 is obviously the best move. After we take the queens, f3 is coming, and much better structure, and a7 and c6 pawns will be long-term weakness for black in the endgame. We have dominant position here. Bishop c5 is much better move, and after few forced move, my suggestion here is to play queen. We want to bring the rooks into the game, and you know, we simply have the better development and currently better sense. So one, I think it's FIDE Master played here a6 against Shimano, which engine definitely don't like, and it seems like you know, after rook fd1 the queen is pinned. X-ray here is really dangerous. So if you, for example, play queen c7, that can be terrible mistake, because you know, in the end all queen side is stacked. It's very hard to develop for you, you know, while we're gonna gradually improve our pieces, you know, and we're gonna definitely take control over c and d file very soon. So maybe better move is queen e7, since the queen is not a target there, and after bishop f3, knight f3, you know, engine claims here much better position for us, and I agree, since there's always some ideas bishop c5, e5, you know, and we achieve e5, we always have some knight e4, knight g5, or knight e4, knight d6, and since that already seems unpleasant for black, if he push e5, we have the control over the e5 square. So a6 is mistake. Knight e5 is also possible move here for black, kinda seems logical. But we have knight c6, very interesting response. Since if we take on c6, that would be terrible mistake, because after knight b5 we have winning position. All his development is stuck, rook fd1, knight d6 is coming, we have winning position. So he needs to find here queen d6, and after we trade all pieces, rook c1, rook d8, e5, very important move. I always like this structure. e5 versus this structure offer us usually good attacking chances. And how we're gonna use that? So after knight e8, you know, after knight e8, bishop d3. We have this structure, we need to continue with some initiative. So bishop d3, we have some here. We have definitely here some threats. So maybe the best move according to engine is g6, but also g6 makes some weaknesses around king, or some dark squares, weaknesses around the dark squares. So here white already has some pleasant position and a few good moves, but since this was always some sharp weapon, we play aggressively. I would like to play h4 here, you know. h5 is coming, it's difficult for black to complete development, and there is always some knight e4, knight f6, you know, threat in the air. So a6 and knight e5 doesn't offer some good prospects for black, so maybe queen e7 is the most logical move. And after bishop e3, we are probably ready to push f4 here immediately, but engine finds this very unpleasant move, knight e5. So if you play f4, knight g4 is definitely punished for us. And I also don't want to lose the time on h3, so I play maybe immediately knight. So it seems like we have winning position here, since if we move the bishop, we push f4, e5, and if we don't, we take a knight e6. But thankfully to knight g4, he can save his position. But after knight c5, knight e3, we have very beautiful move, rook fc1. I don't want to trade more pieces, since my knights are much more active and I keep the pieces for advantage. So after knight g4, h3, queen e3, we have like more active pieces. Queen g3, e5 poses a serious threat. And of course, all depends how's gonna black play. We can always double rooks on c file, because I think c file here is really important for us. He still didn't develop nothing, and this definitely position. And I mean, according to engine, white is slightly better, but you know, visually seems like dominant position for us. So that's about knight f6. Let's continue with c5. c5 is main move, and after d5, we are definitely now in accept the queen's gambit, which arise after dxc4, e4, c5, d5, f6, knight c3. So whoever plays third move e4 against queens, except the queen's gambit, this analyze will be also valuable for him. So let's see. d5, again knight f6 is possible, you know, and positions are very similar to positions we analyzed above. Don't forget that before every bishop d6 he must play a6, and after knight f3, queen e2, we already transpose, you know, to this position, which we analyze in fourth move, knight f6. So e takes d5. I must say e takes d5 looks completely logical move, since this position played many times, you know. And after knight f6, again transpose to analyze, we've done, you know, knight b5 is coming. And after a6, as I said, I think almost every single player here automatically play a4, but knight f3 is the right move, and once again we claim advantage. Also analyze in the lines above. So then what to play? Only few times play this move, but I think it's the best move to maintain equality. So after knight e7, this knight will come to g6 and definitely provide some counterplay for black. So I try to analyze this position a little bit, but it seems that at the end of this position, you know, we have nice solid position, but I believe black is okay. We have some solid setup, but also black position seems very flexible, you know, this bishop pair, you know, knight on g6 offers some attacking prospects, you know. So there's no immediate threats from our perspective, from our side, and that allows definitely black to hold some balance, and I think to look for some counterplay. So that's why I don't want to play e takes d5 here. I want to play queen d5, and after queen d5, I don't want to go for knight d5, since it's most played move, but also most logical move, because after bishop c4, black can play knight f6, and knight f6 was played by my colleague from a national team, Grandmaster Emir Zdarevic, who played Accept Queen's Gambit all his life, and he's very good expert there. He knows all these tiny details, and he played this in Olympiad. I remember this very well. This was my first Olympiad for my national team, Tromsø, Norway 2014, and he played against Aglestein. So after few moves here, I think that White has solid position, normal position, maybe slightly favorable due to these weaknesses on king side, but this also opens g file, which can offer some prospects for black. His compensation definitely comes from 3 versus 2 on queen side, bishop pair, and open g file, so I think black is fine. Black is definitely fine here. So e takes d5 is interesting improvement over previous games. Here, we don't have a lot of games in database, and I want immediately to mention that here bishop f4 poses a serious threat. Also, it's very important to remember that in any of next few moves, a6 is never good move for black. So let's see, for example, now immediately. So if we play a6, securing b5 square, we simply play bishop f4. So if you want to keep this bishop, g3 is coming. g3, bishop g2, long castle, d6, rook e1, we have dominant position. So that's why Timofeyev didn't play this move. Timofeyev played bishop f5, which should be played without a6, because now he's too late. Castle knight e7, I think I can't remember what Matwako played here, but knight f3 is definitely move, and after one castle, we have at the end this position, where I think it's very pleasant for us. Eventually, after a5, we're gonna kick this knight from b6, then followed by knight d2, knight c4, we have pass pawn, d pass pawn, rook e1 is coming, I think this is already enough to have a dominant position, and also, I don't see any counterplay for black. So a6 is mistake. How about knight f6? Knight f6 looks like normal developing move, but it's unfortunately also for black mistake. After knight f3 and bishop f4, once again crucial move. We have so many threats here. Of course, it all depends how's gonna black play. But bishop c7 followed by d6 is always threat. Rook e1, g3, bishop g2. So for example, if we play knight h5 here, trying to remove this bishop from this diagonal, playing bishop d6 by himself, no. We don't leave this diagonal, we play bishop c7 followed by d6, knight d5 also. It looks completely lost for black perspective. So after bishop e7, my suggestion is g3, but definitely rook e1 looks good as well. We wouldn't do any mistake by playing rook e1, but g3 is slightly better move. And according to engine, we are close to dominant position. But I must say, just by looking this position for just 1 pawn, we gain much better development. Black pieces are stuck. There's no solution against d6 in some moment. And when d6 comes, this bishop from g2 will be very dangerous. Rook e1 is coming, knight d2, knight e4. Visually, position looks much better than engine evaluated. So the best move for black is immediately to play bishop f5. And at the first, I remember when I analyzed this position, I thought, in one moment a6 must be played, transposing to all these lines we already analyzed. But it's unbelievable, but black can play here one castle. Once again, if you play a6, as seems as the most logical move, because after one castle, knight b5 is in the air, we simply take on c4, and after one castle, d6. Position looks very bad for black. And also, if we play b5 here, b5, we go back. We can play d3, f1, but I want to play on e2 to push g4. There is nothing wrong against knight f3, but also g4. I like simply this g4. And after bishop c7 idea we already saw, followed by d6, black looks completely paralyzed. So, long castle, it's crazy move, but it works. Otherwise, it would be very painful for black. Knight b5. We threat mate in 1, so he must play knight b6. And at the end of this forced line, of course, knight e5 is threat, f6. At the end of this line, according to engine, we are slightly better. Bishop g3 is coming, a3 will secure our king. Knight d2, knight c4, we're gonna collect this pawn, definitely, we have also d pawn, past d pawn, so definitely black is solid here, that's only small advantage, but I think it's long lasting. It's I think it's much easier to play for us, and of course, Black also needs to find all of these moves because we are here in new position. Bishop f5. Black needs to go deep into preparation to understand that Bishop f5 is here only the move, following by long castle. But I also think no one would go this deep for Black just to be worse after knight b5. They'll probably search for some another lines, so that's good for us, since if he enter into this, our opponent definitely will not be that much prepared. So that's it, guys, from this course. I hope you enjoyed all of these new ideas, new lines, aggressive setup against many different variations by Black. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in next course.